Coming up on We Talk News this week, Vice President Kamala Harris on ABC's Jimmy Kimmel Live, and the host has news for her.
Are you aware that there is a strain of cannabis named after you, Kamala Kush? Did you know that? Yeah.
Seriously,
for real.
I did not know that.
You didn't know it? They didn't even send you any?
No.
Oh, that's outrageous.
Michigan is the new #1 cannabis market in terms of products sold, knocking California off the top spot in that category, while the Golden State still drives the most revenue in the country. And the next steps towards rescheduling cannabis, now back in the hands of the DOJ as the federal government prepares to ease restrictions on the plant. MSO Green Thumb Industries offers Boston Beer a chance for collaboration or merger. Is this just the beginning of other industry mergers with big alcohol and cannabis? Or is it just a strategy to get GTI on the U.S. Stock Exchange? Plus, politics making no sense in the state of Florida, where their governor, Ron DeSantis, supports hemp-derived intoxicants while continuing to fight the adult use initiative on the fall ballot. Can someone please explain to him it's the same plant? And speaking of Florida, Trulieve opens up its 200th dispensary to become the biggest cannabis operator in the country. Perpetual drones highlight the sky at the second annual Flower Expo in the Bay State as the expo celebrates the cannabis industry in Massachusetts with hundreds of vendors, record crowds, decision makers, and a majority of the state dispensaries on hand. We talk with that show's organizer, Jason Bello, on location at the Franklin County Fairgrounds.
Absolutely, and thank you, by the way, Jimmy. You're one of my favorite guys to talk to.
All that and coast-to-coast cannabis news on We Talk News with Alaina Pinto. Next.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Weed Talk News, Pro Cannabis Media's weekly roundup of cannabis news from coast to coast. I'm Alaina Pinto. The fallout continues from the 2024 Farm Bill passed by the House, but that industry continues to stand firm on leaving the definition of hemp the same at 0.3% THC. In a special edition of Weed Talk News this week, the CEO and founder of Cornbread Hemp out of Louisville, Kentucky, Jim Higdon, talked with Washington State's Matthew Friedlander, Oregon's Marianne Curstejee, and PCM founder Jimmy Young.
Are you concerned about the future of the hemp industry based on what you're hearing coming out of Washington, D.C.?
I'm not concerned about the future of the hemp industry because I believe what happened in the Farm Bill and the House Ag Committee is not going to ever become final law. Long way for it to go. And the only thing that the backers of this amendment had working for them was the element of surprise, and they have shot that bullet. And now that people are aware of what they were trying to pull in the Farm Bill, I don't think that it will ever see the light of day. So I'm not at all concerned about it, how it's going to end up. It's very frustrating right now in the midst of it and having to divert our attention to fighting it on Capitol Hill. But I'm certain that when the dust settles, we will be victorious, and these people who are trying to recriminalize THC and hemp will fail.
Higdon is a member of the U.S. Hemp Roundtable, and the entirety of that special Weed Talk News show is available on procannabismedia.com, our website, and our YouTube channel. Meanwhile, the DOJ in Washington, D.C. continues to prepare for the move of cannabis to Schedule 3 of the Controlled Substances Act, while the public comment period continues. Green Market Report shared that in the first week of public comments, 97% were positive, and the move to Schedule 3 is expected to be adopted. But only 11,000 comments in the first 2 weeks from the entire cannabis community. Pro Cannabis Media will continue to share the link that takes you directly to the comments section, so share yours. You can tell your cannabis story to the DEA. The comment period continues until July 22nd. But even when that closes, there are conflicting reports on how long it might take to implement the changes. The biggest one is, of course, getting rid of that unjust 280E clause that doesn't allow the cannabis industry to take standard business deductions that every other business in America can. Removing that unfair tax burden on a billion-dollar industry will open up revenue margins for many dispensaries, growers, and manufacturers. That will take a lot of financial pressure off companies that have been crippled by federal laws and state compliance and regulations. Washington, D.C. typically slows down for the summer, but that doesn't seem to be the case this year. The DOJ has begun the process to reschedule cannabis. The House approved a spending bill allowing the VA to recommend medical cannabis, and the DoD may soon stop testing recruits for the plant medicine. Plus, a GOP House committee just dropped a major spending bill that does not include an old rule blocking Washington, D.C. from adult use sales. They've also thrown in some extra banking protections for cannabis businesses. Andrew Behringer is keeping up with all the news from our nation's capital.
I'm Andrew Behringer, and this is the DC Area Report for We Talk News. The House of Representatives has approved amendments to the Military Construction, Veterans Affairs, and related agencies' fiscal year 2024 appropriations bill. The amendments brought by the Congressional Cannabis Caucus co-chairs would allow veterans to participate in state legal medical cannabis programs without facing barriers from the Department of Veterans Affairs. The amendment was approved in a vote 290 to 116. Under the current status quo, VA doctors are limited in the treatment options they can offer to veteran patients, while non-veterans can readily access these treatments in many states. Representative Earl Blumenauer, who is set to retire later this year, expressed disappointment that the VA is trapped in time and not giving veterans the full benefits of medical cannabis. Similar, VA-focused cannabis provisions were approved last year in both the House and the Senate, but ultimately failed to reach the final version of the bill. Now, in other news, a GOP-led House committee is proposing to prohibit military branches from testing recruits for cannabis as part of the 2025 National Defense Authorization Act. The House Armed Service Subcommittee on Military Personnel released recommended language containing the cannabis provision. Now, the DoD previously told lawmakers that Delta-9 THC is the most common substance appearing on positive drug tests for active duty military service members. Now, looking at DC news, a GOP House committee chaired by Representative Dave Joyce out of Ohio has introduced a large-scaling spending bill that excludes a long-standing rider blocking Washington, D.C. from legalizing adult-use cannabis sales. The bill also includes new protections for banks that will work with state legal cannabis businesses. The removal of DC cannabis sales ban is notable as it has been consistently maintained in budget proposals even by President Joe Biden. I'm Andrew Behringer reporting for We Talk News.
California is still the king of the cannabis market when it comes to revenue. Last year, the state reported $5.1 billion in taxable sales, which is the number one state for sales and revenue. However, for the first time, the state of Michigan has sold more products than California. And now there are 39 million people in the Golden State and only 10 million in Michigan. But that state can claim that there are number one in total products sold. They are number one in total products sold. As if losing the cannabis product sales grown to Michigan isn't enough, there's more bad news for California. New data from BDSA this week shows California's legal cannabis market started the year slowly. In fact, they are reporting their worst quarter of revenue since the second quarter of 2020. Industry expert Hirsch Jane said the Golden State has, quote, squandered the legal cannabis opportunity and that the state's entire market is, quote, on the verge of collapse. Here's our California cannabis expert, LeVanna Vassau, with the Golden State Cannabis Report.
I'm LeVanna Vassau from the Bay Sesh reporting for PCM with this week's California Report for We Talk News. As you may have figured out by now, I am very proud of my California roots. Sure, sales dropped again, but there has been an adjustment in the market that has been caused by the changes in the laws and tighter regulations regarding testing. So many major MSOs have vacated or even failed, like MedMen. So while the Michigan can claim a win for the amount of different products sold, California is still the queen of the cannabis industry because in any business, it's always about the bottom line. And the Golden State continues to dominate on the revenue front. And I may as well have a segment called Who's Suing Who this week. Well, this week it's John Doe via the County of Marin versus Steezy, one of the most popular vape brands in the state and country. This John Doe has chosen to remain anonymous while Marin County is accusing the brand of marketing its high-potency products to young people and being responsible for the rise of cannabis-induced psychosis amongst teenagers. In other news, the feds put out a warning about products on shelves containing Delta-8 THCO, which is a hemp-derived synthetic THC that was not included in the 2018 Farm Bill because it really didn't exist back then. And some companies have created an entire industry around this loophole. After the feds made an official announcement about Delta-8 THCO not being legal last fall, the Delta-8 industry has been getting a shakedown. On May 30th, the California Department of Public Health issued a notice about Mary Jones's Sodas, a Seattle-based drink company with infused THC drinks. These sodas are manufactured in Michigan and sold at Total Wine & More, a Maryland-based American beverage retailer. The announcement said, quote, "The California Department of Public Health is warning consumers not to drink Jones's hemp-infused soda, which have been identified as containing prohibited THC isolate ingredients. Industrial hemp products are legal in California, but are prohibited under the state law from containing THC isolates." Governor Gavin Newsom directed the CDPH and the California Department of Alcohol, Beverage, and Control to issue notices. This announcement also mentioned that at the time, the Jones Soda Company had ignored the recall despite them being notified a month prior to the May 30th announcement. The SF Gate reported that Total Wine & More has not removed the THC drinks from their website product offerings. California police are officially the most chill in the country. Over the past few weeks, they've announced their support of legalizing cannabis. Back in May, a group of 80,000 police officers from an association of 950 police unions officially announced their support of the state's 2.0 Act. The federal bill would amend the Controlled Substance Act. It would protect people in compliance with legal states. It would also add protection of the indigenous market and authorize interstate commerce to begin, while calling for a currently unspecified federal tax on cannabis sales to support regulations and enforcement. I'm LeVanna Vassau from the Bay Sesh reporting for Pro Cannabis Media with this week's California report for Weed Talk News. And perhaps the biggest story in California this week is the VP Kamala Harris's appearance on the Jimmy Kimmel Show.
It was in a category with heroin. Now it's in a category with like steroids and things that people use regularly. That's good, I assume.
Well, look, I think we both agree. People shouldn't have to go to jail for smoking weed. There was a time when people would say, well, marijuana is a gateway drug.
Yes.
And these were failed policies, right? The resources should be better directed and will be better directed to deal with opioid addiction, and what we need to do around fentanyl, getting more resources into mental health and mental health care, right?
Do you know
That's
that
the smarter way.
Are you aware that there is a strain of cannabis named after you, Kamala Kush? Did you know that? Yeah.
Seriously.
Seriously, for
I
real.
did not know that.
You didn't know it? They didn't even send you any?
No.
Oh, that's outrageous. You'd think you would get that.
Another part of the stigma that the cannabis industry faces on a daily basis is that cannabis legalization and the opening of dispensary stores results in a decline in property values. A new study by a real estate data company discovers that it has the exact opposite effect on property values. Research collected by the real estate data company Tomo shows in the counties where dispensaries are opening around the country in 24 legal states. And that there was a 2% increase in property values. When shops are put in distressed areas, new economic zones build up around them, increasing property values even more. So maybe that will help the folks in South Dakota pass adult use this fall, now that it's officially on the ballot this coming November. Don't get too excited about that possibility. It was a few years ago that adult use was voted in, only to be shut down by their prohibition governor, Kristi Noem. Now let's go west to Oregon with Marianne Curstejee.
I'm Marianne from Alibi with this week's Oregon Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. This week, Jimmy Kimmel, yes, that Jimmy Kimmel, asked VP Kamala Harris about the cannabis strain called Kamala Kush. She was surprised to hear about it. Oregon-based farm Alibi Cannabis released a limited edition of this strain a couple of years ago. So excited to see Jimmy Kimmel talking about cannabis. VP Harris is known for her anti-cannabis stance, but hopefully she is more open to conversations about the benefits of cannabis. Next, Portland's Willamette Week published an article this week discussing the possible impact of rescheduling on Oregon's cannabis industry. Reporter Brianna Wilson discussed the potential for more research, possible banking reforms, and medical insurance coverage. All of this is, in quotes, ambiguous and speculative, according to Steve Rogers at Theorem. And finally, stay tuned next week as the director of the OLCC meets with the Oregon Trade Association, CHOW. That's the Oregon Cannabis Report for this week. I'm Marianne with Alibi for Weed Talk News.
In New York, there is more confusion and frustration. The resignation of a key regulator and the state-mandated audit of the Office of Cannabis Management has made a difficult situation even worse. Friday is Chris Alexander's last day as executive director of the OCM, leaving a void in leadership. Add in the fact that social equity administrator Damian Fagan continues to be on forced leave for his actions in the Jenny Loves recall, and that there has not been one communique from the Office of Cannabis Management since May 10th. New Yorkers continue to wonder how and why this happened. Well, that'll do it for the A Block. But remember, you can always check out the entire show on the homepage of procannabismedia.com's website, or wait until we release the B Block on Tuesdays on our YouTube channel. In the next part, the B Block, you have to check out what is going on in the state of Florida. Their governor, Ron DeSantis, continues to fight against the adult use initiative that is on the ballot in November. But now DeSantis is supporting the unregulated THCA and Delta 8 products derived from hemp. We'll explain the situation in Florida next on Weed Talk News. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Weed Talk News. This is the B Block. I'm Alaina Pinto. There is quite a battle going on in the state of Florida, where their medical market is the largest in the country, with 860,000 registered patients. Now, with 200 dispensaries, Trulieve dominates the medical market, and this fall, that state will vote on legalizing adult use. The Smart and Safe campaign in Florida is behind the passing of that question, but it is getting an annoying challenge from the governor, Ron DeSantis. Believe it or not, he is now supporting the unregulated products that are derived with legal hemp that measure 0.3% THC. However, when heated or flamed, that Delta 8 or 9 THC turns into THCA, a synthetic cannabinoid that gets users buzzed. 17 states have banned these products that are regularly sold in smoke shops, convenience stores, and gas stations. This practice has led to some policy conflict within the industry, even though both want more regulation and research of the same plant, rather than having to rely on the federal government to come up with regulations on the plant and even CBD. This is something the FDA has ignored for 6 years. since the 2018 Farm Bill. Politics are playing a big role in Arizona's cannabis industry too. Hot hemp and social equity licensing continue to be big issues in the Grand Canyon state. With more from Arizona, here's Karen Black.
I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Arizona's social equity licensing program is back in the news with a scathing report about its failure hitting multiple media outlets. Critics claim the effort had the exact opposite effect of what voters intended, with only a handful of social equity license holders having retained an ownership stake in their licenses. Unfortunately, there's a lot of criticism and not a lot of proposed solutions. The state, at least at one time, was considering issuing additional social equity licenses since an effort to return initial licenses to original awardees, which never would have worked anyway, failed in the Arizona Senate earlier this year. On the hemp front, Executive Director Sully Sullivan recently published an op-ed on the Arizona Hemp Industry Trade Association's website calling for support for a bill that proposes a comprehensive state hemp regulatory framework. In the piece, Mr. Sullivan accuses national cannabis brands of racketeering and intentionally selling adult use products as hemp-derived THC. And he said they're doing it as they lobby against hemp regulation. He calls their efforts misguided and monopolistic and claims they stifle competition and undermine growth of the hemp industry. We'll continue to follow this ongoing fight and the fate of House Bill 2406, which is currently in the Arizona Senate for amendments. Here's some economic data from both sides of the industry. According to the Hemp Industry Trade Association, demand for hemp products in Arizona is just shy of 700 million. A post-regulated Arizona hemp market would create over 8,000 jobs, pay approximately $325 million in wages, and generate over $39 million in sales taxes. On the other side, May 2024 marijuana sales are estimated at just over 102 million, which represents a 1% decrease from April and is nearly 13% less than last year. That's this week's Arizona Cannabis Report. I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting reporting for Weed Talk News.
This is quickly becoming big business in Missouri, and local governments want a piece of the green pie. In Buchanan County, in the Show Me state, a second judge approved an extra 3% tax on adult use cannabis sales. This is in addition to what cities already charge. So now cannabis sales taxes are reaching a whopping 12%. So you can imagine some folks aren't exactly thrilled about that. St. Louis County had a similar ruling not too long ago, and there may be more on the horizon. Brandon Jones has more from the Show Me state.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones with B Green Distribution with the Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. And a little bit here that's going on a little bit different than other states is we have a new coalition that the state decided to put together. So they're going to have a maximum of 30 members. They're going to have a little board that is of different levels of experience of cannabis to help people with their questions and comments and how to go about navigating the field of the cannabis industry. The funny thing is, though, is to be one of the members, you have to either have ownership or a leadership position in a licensed cannabis facility. So I guess I'm trying to figure out how you're having all different types of people and all different levels if you have to be in a leadership or ownership role of a licensed facility. But hey, at least they're trying to help. So who knows where that's coming from or where it's going. But there's another coalition put on by the state here in Missouri to help people. It is obviously event season now. We're not having to wait anymore. The first huge event, we had KC Pride in downtown. There was lots of different vendors there, including cannabis, THCA vendors, and all sorts of vendors around there, just being able to consume in downtown Missouri, including agencies like the FBI, the fire department, and the police department were there as well. And cannabis consumption was going on freely and happening throughout the entire space. Another thing that's going on here is all of the different sales that are going on with the THCA stuff that we've talked about. So that still is allowed here in the state of Missouri at gas stations as well as different spots that you can get here. So that is still a booming industry here in Missouri. THCA is still a profitable thing going on here. And it is time to get down here for events next July. A Behringer event to help veterans is called Agents of Valor. It's going to be huge over downtown Kansas City, and we'd love to have anybody out to help support veterans. I know a couple of people are actually giving away free genetics and stuff to veterans as long as you can show your military ID. So get out here to Missouri where it's recreational, it's fun, and it's beautiful weather. I'm Brandon Jones with Be Green Distribution with the Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Stay medicated and educated. Have a great week.
There is more fallout over Illinois Congresswoman Mary Miller's 11th hour amendment to the House version of the Farm Bill for 2024. Lawmakers seek to close that THCA loophole that has turned into a new billion-dollar industry. 6 years later, lawmakers are recognizing they made a few mistakes by basically legalizing the cannabis plant by defining hemp as cannabis with a limit of 0.3% THC. Now, the DEA says there wasn't even a loophole to begin with. Crazy, right? As more and more states ban products with hemp-derived THC and pull them from shelves, Louisiana has taken a different approach. State lawmakers are proposing to increase restrictions on those products rather than ban them outright. One of the largest, if not the largest, hemp industry is in Texas. The Toke Agency's Lisa Williams has our Lone Star Cannabis report. Here she is.
I'm Lisa Williams, founder of the Toke Agency with the Texas Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Saddle up because we're in for a wild ride through the Lone Star State's hemp industry. This week, the Texas State Senate Affairs Committee found itself in a showdown over Delta 8 and Delta 9 products. Senator Charles Perry, the Lubbock Republican who championed the 2019 agricultural hemp legislation, looked like a cowboy who just realized his herd had turned into a stampede. The boom in Texas consumable hemp market, sprouting more retail spots than you could shake a stick at, over 7,000 to be exact, has lawmakers scrambling to wrangle the industry's rapid growth. Perry's initial legislation was meant to be a farmer-friendly move, but now he's feeling like he accidentally left the barn door wide open. I told these retailers, if you guys screw up by being cute and getting people high off this, there will be consequences, he said, channeling his inner disappointed dad. Well, folks, the hemp chickens have come to roost, and it's time to clean up this mess. The committee discussed tightening the reins on the industry, which has been galloping away with little regulation. Products like Delta 8 and Delta 9, which are found in everything from gummies to smokables, are currently skating on thin ice of legal ambiguity. The committee is considering stricter regulations, including age limits, child-proof packaging, and rigorous third-party testing. One colorful testimony came from Kyle Aurora of Texas Happy Club, who highlighted the economic benefits of the hemp industry. We have paid over $1 million in state taxes, and we are one small fish in a big pond, he said. But it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. Concerns about heavy metals, pesticides, and the appeal of these products to young people were also brought to the table. In true Texas fashion, there was a broad consensus on the need for better standards and enforcements. Even those who might oppose outright bans on Delta products agreed that some regulation is necessary to keep the industry on the straight and narrow. So as Texas lawmakers gear up for their next session, they're poised to lasso this runaway market and implement much-needed regulations. Whether they could find balance between supporting the booming hemp industry and ensuring public safety remains to be seen. I'm Lisa Williams, founder of the Toke Agency with the Texas Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News.
With more from Michigan, here's Amie Carter.
I'm Amie Carter from Michigan Weedsters with this week's Weed Talk News. In a surprising turn of events, Michigan has surpassed California in legal cannabis sales. According to new data from cannabis analytics firm BDSA, despite California's renowned reputation and a larger population, Michigan emerged as a top-selling state in the U.S. with 22 million in cannabis products sold in March, compared to California's 21.3 million. This marks the first time another state has outsold California in legal cannabis products. The U.S. Department of Justice announced on Wednesday that Ryan Richmond, the owner of Relief Choices LLC, a medical marijuana dispensary in Warren, has been handed a 24-month prison sentence for his involvement in tax evasion and obstructing an IRS investigation. The federal government has taken strict action against this Bloomfield Hills business operator. Michigan's Gems and Genetics kicked off this summer with an amazing event out at the Sarnes Campground in Morley, Michigan. The event included Mendo Dope, over 40 vendors, a light show, and a ton of awesome people having a great time. I'm Amie Carter with Michigan Weedsters for this week's Weed Talk News.
News out of Ohio continues to point towards the opening of adult use sales before the end of June. Attorney and consultant Harry Bernstein has more.
This is Harry Bernstein with Verdict Compliance Partners and the Ohio Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. First up, Ohio is on the brink of a major milestone, the implementation of adult use cannabis sales. Applications are now open for adult use cannabis dispensary licensees, marking a significant step forward. Current medical cannabis dispensaries are gearing up to apply for the dual use licenses that would allow them to sell both medical and adult use cannabis. Companies are moving swiftly, hoping to welcome adult use customers by the end of July. While the law sets a deadline of September for license approvals, things seem to be moving ahead of schedule, so keep your eyes peeled for adult sales sooner rather than later. In the meantime, Ohioans can already enjoy some new freedoms under the law. Individuals can now legally grow up to 6 cannabis plants per person with a maximum of 12 per household. Personal use is also legal, allowing adults 21 and older to possess and use cannabis responsibly. Unfortunately, the path to full implementation isn't without its challenges. Governor DeWine is raising concerns about the unregulated hemp market, particularly THC derivatives, which are currently available with limited to no restrictions. The governor is pushing for stricter regulations to ensure these products are inaccessible to minors. He's also advocating for increased regulation of adult use cannabis to protect public spaces and to prevent exposure to children. Adding to the regulatory landscape, Senate Bill 278 has been introduced, which would modify the existing law by increasing taxes and creating additional regulations, including requiring home growers to register with the state. The bill's fate is uncertain, with only 2 remaining Senate sessions before the summer break. Advocates argue this bill could be an overreach, potentially conflicting with the spirit of Issue 2, which voters approved last November. Cannabis industry leaders continue to educate consumers regarding the laws and regulation while emphasizing the importance of respecting others when using cannabis. As we navigate these exciting changes, stay tuned for more updates on Ohio's journey into the adult use cannabis market. The momentum is undeniable. Ohio is on its way to becoming a key player in the cannabis industry. That's the Ohio Cannabis Report for this week. I'm Harry Bernstein with Verdict Compliance Partners reporting for Weed Talk News.
That will wrap up the B block, and we will wrap up this week's Weed Talk News in the C block here on our YouTube channel on Wednesday. Or you can go to procannabismedia.com right now and watch the entire show on demand. The C block is next. Welcome back to the final section, or the C block, of Weed Talk News. I'm Alaina Pinto. In Minnesota, the cannabis cops have been cracking down hard. State regulators destroyed nearly $300,000 worth of hot hemp products seized from 58 businesses. The siege began in March when the state gave medical cannabis inspectors the power to enforce a ban on THCA. But on a more positive note, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz just signed a bill to get the ball rolling early for next year's legal market launch. That's right. Some lucky cultivators are going to be awarded licenses to start growing cannabis ahead of schedule this year. Now, before you spark one up in celebration, this early harvest can't be sold or processed until full licensing kicks in. But hey, at least they'll have some primo Minnesota bud ready to go. The new law also expands who qualifies as a social equity applicant for those coveted cannabis licenses. We're talking to 30 to 40% of adults in the state could be eligible. But they're not just handing out licenses like candy. There's a qualified lottery system to keep the market from getting oversaturated the first 2 years. And doctors will soon be able to recommend cannabis to medical patients for any condition. Plus, patients can designate a caregiver to grow up to 8 plants on their behalf. It's good news for sure. Is there any more good news in Virginia? Well, Joe Parsons will dig it up. Here's his Virginia Cannabis Report.
I'm Joe Parsons with the Virginia Cannabis Connection, and this is the Virginia Cannabis Report on Weed Talk News. A tragic news statistic was revealed last week in Virginia Beach. According to Police Chief Paul Newdigate, over 90% of the city's drug-related crimes involving guns are due to cannabis, not heroin or cocaine like you'd think, but cannabis, specifically the legacy market. Without a legal framework for the state-passed adult use program and the ever-increasing prices of the medical market due to lack of competition, the Virginia legacy market has become a multi-million-dollar cash grab for unlicensed growers to push untested and potentially dangerous products to anyone and everyone. Now, this news caught the attention of former Green Bay Packer and now Democratic Senator Aaron Rouse. This caught the senator's attention because not only did he pioneer the adult use cannabis bill that could have put a huge dent in legacy sales, but he also represents Virginia Beach. Senator Rouse has made a renewed call on social media that he's already hard at work to get another bill passed for this year's session, in hopes that this time it'll be veto-proof and bulletproof, unlike his constituents in his district that are not. Next up in the Commonwealth, the race is on for the coveted prize to be the health service provider for Health Service Area 1 in Virginia. HSA 1 has said is the only health service area without a provider since the Illinois-based MSO PharmaCann had their license revoked in 2020 due to not having a facility built by the 2019 deadline. PharmaCann filed suit against the Virginia Board of Pharmacy, and new applications for conditional permits were held until litigation ended in April of 2023. Now, 40 applications were submitted from MSO giants hoping to share the marketplace in the Commonwealth. Some of the more notable applicants were AYR Wellness from Florida, Cureleaf from Massachusetts, Chicago's Cresco Labs, and TrueLeaf, also from Florida. Now, they all paid a hefty price to attempt to pay to try to play. The exuberant fees set by the Virginia Board of Pharmacy in 2018 have not been changed since the Virginia Cannabis Control Authority took control in 2024. For that reason, only huge MSO companies can afford to take the gamble of an $18,000 non-refundable fee to even apply. Now, if you think that sounds steep, you'd be right. Virginia has one of the highest application fees in the nation. But for the big MSOs, it's well worth it. Because if you win, you have full market control in the entire district with absolutely no competition to get in your way. The winner will be announced at the end of June. And best believe, I'll let you know as soon as I know. Well, that's all for this week's Virginia Cannabis Report. From the Virginia Cannabis Connection and reporting for Weed Talk News, I'm Joe Parsons. Until next time, stay lifted.
On April 20th, 420 this year, North Carolina's Eastern Cherokee Nation opened up for the first medical sales of cannabis in that state. Now that same indigenous group is announcing they will open for adult use sometime this summer. It's a very interesting situation in North Carolina since they still have some of the most harsh laws in the country. But no such problem in Nevada, where Tina Tasaka keeps an eye on the rollout of social clubs in Las Vegas.
I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies, and this is the Nevada Report for Weed Talk News. Although this may seem a little bit more like the Florida Report. Since the opening of Planet 13 Consumption Lounge Dazed on April 5th, 2024, and the massive acquisition of VitaCann in Florida, let's do a rundown on the behemoth Planet 13 based in Las Vegas, Nevada. According to the Dales Report interview with CEO Planet 13, Larry Scheffler, there is an extremely exciting expansion news for Florida and Nevada. And here's the breakdown. The lounge, Dazed, in Las Vegas, is getting very positive response. It has a speakeasy vibe, beautiful chandeliers, ongoing celebrity podcasts that can be witnessed. Pauly Shore was there last week for a comedy show, yet the public still needs to be educated about the lounge and what it offers. The lounge is serving at least 100 people per day. They sell their own brand of flower and products. There are no outside brands. Planet 13 is a massive entertainment complex. It's an experience, and 84% of the guests that visit are tourists. The location is just off the strip. In Florida, VitaCann has 26 medical dispensaries. So, the plan. Once Amendment Number 3 passes, which is recreational marijuana, the projection is for 60 stores by 2026, the first in Miami and then one per month. Brands in Nevada will be available in Florida once they're licensed. VitaCann has a cultivation in Jacksonville over 250,000 square feet with another 750,000 to convert. They have 178 acres that they can also grow on. Planet 13 feels their experience with quality flower and marketing will set them apart in Florida. At present, the revenues for VitaCann and Planet 13 are separate, but they will be consolidated. Revenues for flower are 157% year over year and 37% for extracts year over year. Currently, VitaCann is 9th in size, and with the expansion, this will place them 6th in the Sunshine State. A lifestyle apparel brand will also be launching soon. Overall, Mr. Scheffler was extremely positive and is also excited about 2 more Nevada dispensaries and the fact that there were no red flags with VitaCann and they are cash flow positive. As promised, we did follow up on watching Planet 13 and we will keep our eyes on DeSantis and the Sunshine State. That's it for the 702. I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies and Weed Talk News.
Taking a quick look at the developing international scene, South Africa legalized adult use of cannabis on the federal level. They became the first country in Africa to legalize cannabis. So now citizens in South Africa may possess unlimited seeds and seedlings and up to 4 plants per adult per dwelling. They are allowing home grow privately, but if you grow in a public place and you can produce up to 100 and 600 grams of that plant. Gifting is okay, but no public consumption at this time. So now let's go north of the border to Canada with Debi Facey.
This is Debi Facey with the Canadian Strain of the Week. So, what we have in Canada this week is a story out of Manitoba, which had a $430,000 seized, which included cannabis, psilocybin, and edibles, including some firearms that they found on site. None of the cannabis was legal due to the fact that it had none of the labeling or of the taxation indications on them. So this is something that they have realized that is now not only a problem, but they are intending to look forward and look further into more of the illicit market and others to seize as well. Next, what we have is the government here in Canada wanting to propose a new taxation, or I guess a new lack of taxation for the legal industry, which would mean that there would be less accountability when it comes to indicating when there's a new product coming on the line or when they are making any changes. Also, what's also included is that they are hoping to have less costly containers as well as bags to make it for the LPs have a little bit more of a leeway and a bit more cost effective. This is something that I have a little difference with, but at the same time, I'm hoping that we are able to make it so the LPs and the dispensaries and everyone else is able to make it a little bit more affordable, but we still keep intact of exactly what we need to be accountable for, which is the product, the THC content, and all of the ingredients and whatnot. Last but not least, what we did have here was Hall of Flowers, which is not only one of the greatest conferences, or I would say almost meetups, for the industry and B2B sales as well as dispensaries and bud tenders, but it is also great because here in Toronto we had it that was accessible to the community as well. This is Debi Facey with the Canadian Strain of the Week. Peace.
I'm Doug Miller from High on Wall Street with this week's cannabis stock report for Weed Talk News. Canopy Growth Corp exercised its option to acquire MSO Acreage Holdings for $99.8 million of Acreage Holdings' outstanding debt in exchange for $69.8 million in cash and the discharge of roughly $30.1 million that was held in escrow. Just a few days later, Canopy Growth announced it was planning to raise up to $250 million via an at-the-market ATM equity program. If you remember, on May 22nd, Tilray Brands announced they were going to raise up to $250 million in an ATM equity program. Their stock price has been dipping ever since. So let's see what the stock chart looks like for Canopy Growth and how this news will affect it. It's trading around $7.03, and it's been dipping for a few weeks. I would expect it to pull back a little more, but it's going to set up the run soon. So I'll be watching for the bottom, and I'll mention it. Canopy Growth strategy appears to be raise as much cash as we can and be in the position to take advantage of the U.S. markets as we reschedule cannabis. I won't be surprised if we see other good cannabis news come out as the election nears. And that's this week's Cannabis Stock Report. Reporting for Weed Talk News, I'm Doug Miller.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
More beverage news this week from the Bay State in Massachusetts. Remember, it was last week when the State Alcohol and Beverage Commission issued a cease and desist memo to state licensed liquor stores to pull THC-infused products from their shelves. Now, multi-state operator Green Thumb Industries could be merging with Boston Beer, the makers of Sam Adams. PCM founder Jimmy Young has more from Massachusetts, including an interview with the Talking Joints memo editor, Chris Ferrarone, and video from the Flower Expo this week in Greenfield.
I'm PCM founder Jimmy Young, and this is the Bay State Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. You might remember last week, news came out that the daily use of cannabis has now passed the daily drinkers of alcohol. This was the first time that weed has passed booze in this daily user category. That's a pretty big development in an industry that's only been legal for about a decade. Now, a multi-state operator, Green Thumb Industries, based in Chicago, is talking about merging with Boston Beer, the company that makes Sam Adams. This is more than just a historic merger. It could also allow GTI to trade on the U.S. Stock Exchange instead of the Canadian one, where they are trading now. Now back to the Bay State and my conversation with Chris Ferrone of the Talking Joints memo. Chris, you and I were both at the Flower Expo the last 48 hours out in Greenfield, Mass. The second time they've had an outdoor B2B private event out on the fairgrounds at Franklin County. And it's the second one I've gone to. I've enjoyed it. I think I enjoy it because I obviously like to be outside with the people. And there's that private factor allows some exchange of goods going on at some point. What's your impressions of it?
I think it's super important, especially, I mean, for everybody there. For the second day is for bud tenders, for me as a journalist, because there's this big thing, which is that, cannabis packaging, we don't know what's in it. If it's flower, people don't know what it even looks like a lot of the time. Sometimes there'll be something they can smell and look at in a jar in the store, but dabs. I mean, I buy dabs all the time. I don't know if it's going to be mushed all over the top, if it's really a sugar, if it's listed as a sugar. So just these basics, what new products are coming out, things like 2-gram vapes, how do they work? So as somebody who has to communicate this stuff to the public, it's really great for me to actually put my hands on, try things. You know, it's fun, sure. So I'm on the more serious side. It is very useful for me.
I hate being the oldest guy at one of these shows, by the way, just for the record. That being said, I went home at 9:30, but they had something there that you saw that I had never heard of before. And that was what I would consider to be a fireworks creation through drone projection of video. And I mean, I kind of get it. But
yeah, Perpetual Brands put it on, and you know they're fairly. There was a rebrand. They used to be called something else, Green Care Collective. It's called Perpetual Brands now. They're a pretty big operation, and they did this light show that was pretty. It was pretty amazing. I got to say, at first I was like, you know, these are yuppie fireworks. There's no noise. It's pretty strange, but then they start to form into things. So, you know, fireworks just go up. This was pretty remarkable, you know, and everyone's stoned naturally on mushrooms and what have you. But it was pretty remarkable. Yeah, and some of the, you know, they had a bong in the sky, a lit joint. It was pretty brief, but I think everyone was pretty amazed by it.
Okay, we're here at the Flower Expo out in Greenfield, Massachusetts. This is the second year that I've visited this particular trade show for the cannabis industry, and I got to tell you, I'm a raving fan. Jason Bello is the man behind the Flower Expo. He joins us. Jason, are you happy with the last day and a half? Is this like, you know, you work on this all year, right?
Absolutely, and thank you, by the way, Jimmy. You're one of my favorite guys to talk to. But
I appreciate it.
Very happy with how the event went. Day started with a little bit of rain, and now you're saying it's always got to happen at a Flower Expo. You're going to get a little bit of rain, but we get through it, right?
By the way, little rain is different than the monsoon that blew here through here last year, right?
Now be careful. I got 3 hours left, so don't jinx me. But no, it was a great day. Yesterday was a phenomenal day. Today was a phenomenal day. We had a lot of buyers come through. We had about over 300 dispensaries registered to come. I'm talking to the clients. I think, you know, everybody did business. Everybody's very happy with the turnout, and overall 2 to 3 times the size. Just stunning outdoor activations, an incredible new over 30,000 square foot indoor hall that is just packed to the brim. But this has been a fantastic show so far.
So far, that's the best part. And the party last night, how many people were in the infield with that band? Because it was great. I didn't stay the whole time because I'm old. But tell me, were you pleased with that little addition here?
Absolutely. It was a good time. We had about probably 1,000 people, and we had a big stage. We had a reggae band, Carlton Livingston, and a band out of Boston, Dub Apocalypse reggae group. We had Dispenza they had some DJs, and it was really a fun night. Perpetual ended it with a stunning drone show that went up and lit the sky of Greenfield, but it was phenomenal. Really good event.
And you're going to come back again next year, I'm guessing.
Yes, I will. We will be in the same spot on June 4th and 5th, and you're the first guy to hear it.
Look at it. Breaking news here on Pro Cannabis Media and We Talk News. Jason Bello, always a pleasure, sir. And we'll have more of We Talk News.
And finally, the other side of the story about the increasing daily use of cannabis by adults. Now that 24 states have legalized it, another 14 have decriminalized it, so adults have more access to legal cannabis. It makes sense that daily use would be increasing. The National Survey on Drug Use and Health reports in a self-reported study that cannabis use rose from 15-fold in the U.S. over 30 years. In 1992, the self-reported daily use totaled just under 1 million. But 30 years later, it's 17.7 million, a 15-fold increase. Remember, this is a self-reported study, and access to the legal product increased 500%. So when results of surveys are reported, make sure you read how the results were measured and interpretive. There are thousands of studies on this plant medicine over the past 10 years alone, and more current research might be one of the best developments during this transition from prohibition to legalization. That's this week's Weed Talk News. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly, and remember to like, share, subscribe, and we will see you next time.
It's a whole new world of weed out there, isn't it? Everyone is learning new ways to titrate, ingest, consume, imbibe, and engage with this plant medicine we call cannabis. Now, let me tell you my cannabis story. You know, I've had 4 major surgeries in the past 23 years and suffer from osteoarthritis with a variety of metal parts in my body and one on deck. Now, thanks to those chronic pain issues, I've been a medical patient in Massachusetts for almost 10 years now. I remember my first trip to a dispensary just outside of Boston, and I told the bud tender I didn't want to smoke it anymore. So I tried edibles, then tinctures, then vaping, and now if I'm going to smoke, I only use the Weedgets filtration system. What? The Weedgets.com, Weedgets, that's weed, W-E-E-D, G-E-T-S.com, is where you'll find the planet's coolest product that cools the smoke from everyone's favorite flower. The guy that started this was a pretty good medical device manufacturer, and he created this maze pipe that cools the smoking process from 1300 degrees Fahrenheit upon inflammation down to just 90 degrees when it reaches your mouth. That's right, 1300 down to 90. That's why this maze pipe is amazing. Now, add in the code of PCMTV and you get 15% off. So just go to Weedgets.com and check out the best way to enjoy a cooler smoke with less coughing and hacking and more peace of mind.